You're watching In the Loop. I'm Crystal Park. Our guest today is Councilmember Nancy Navarro. Nancy, thanks so much for stopping by to chat with us today.
Oh, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure.
Well, Nancy, you serve on the Education Committee, and you have been instrumental in the success of the Bell program. Could you tell us a little bit about what the program is and what are some of the tangible benefits that you've seen from the program so far?
Sure. One of the issues that affect a lot of children, especially low-income children, is this notion of the summer slide, which basically means that once a student goes into the summer vacation, especially low-income students are not necessarily exposed to a lot of enrichment activities or perhaps, high-quality camps or things of that nature. And that usually really affects the retention of a lot of the instruction from the previous year. So then when that student starts school the next school year, they have noticed in the school systems this notion of loss of knowledge. And so then they start, really going backwards, if you will, in terms of their academic achievement. And so there have been a lot of programs throughout the country that have sought to address this issue during the summer. And one really amazing program is Bell. It was nearby. It was instituted in Baltimore with great results. And so the Rails Foundation, Josh Rails had a meeting with me and said, hey, we've been studying this program in Baltimore. We realized that it has quite a bit of results and outcomes that we like. Let's take a look at it, and it's a partnership. So the Rails Foundation is able to fund, 25% of the program. The Bell program raises the other 25%, and Montgomery County government, in partnership with the school systems, we put up the other 50%. And it's amazing because it's a way to leverage resources, which is so important these days. So it's a private-public partnership. But it also, they employ MCPS teachers, so there's this high-quality component to it. And it has a very strong evaluation component as well. One of the things I like is that, once a week during the summer, the students do go to field trips. They go to museums. They go to different places that otherwise they may not have the opportunity to do. And they're also fed, so they're able to eat while they're in the program. The results have been extraordinary. Once, we're going to enter now our third year this fall, but once they go back, these are rising third and fourth graders, so once they go back into their next grade and they're evaluated, teachers have reported and they have, been able to record this extraordinary increase in their retention and their academic achievement. So we're really excited. By the time, right now, this is an agreement for 4 years. By the time we're done, about 4,000 plus students will have gone through this program. And my hope is that we can use this as a template because we know that it's high quality, that it's sustainable, it's scalable. And so therefore, I think this is the type of partnerships that we should emulate in so many other areas. It allows you to leverage county dollars with private foundation. And really, truly, in my own sense, you get to save money because these are students that if they went back to school for the next grade and they were not doing as well and you're trying to remediate and you're trying to do all of this, that actually costs a lot more than if you're able to intervene during the summer and set them up for success. Third grade is really important as an indicator of academic success for the rest of your K through 12 experience. So that is why it's so critical for us to intervene in that third grade, rising fourth grade period.
You have been an integral leader in the Children's Opportunity Fund. In a wealthy county like Montgomery County, it may not seem like an opportunity gap, an education gap is that big here in this county, but what have you found with your work with the Children's Opportunity Fund?
Well, two things, one is that Montgomery County's demographics are such that we have extraordinary diversity, not just racial and ethnic, but also socioeconomic. And so we've known that for quite a while. The school system has reported an increase in FARMS rates, which is free and reduced meals. These are students that qualify for that, which is an indicator of poverty. And so at this point, we know it's upwards of 35% of students. And that indicates to us that we have to do whatever is possible to expand opportunities, access for those students. It is not a matter of, children not being extraordinarily bright and gifted and talented. That is not the point. The point is that perhaps they're not exposed to as many opportunities, or they have other challenges at home. It could be hunger. It could be, unstable housing. All of these issues. So, the Children Opportunity Fund really grew out of an idea that I had regarding this notion of dedicated funding streams. I had the real honor of being appointed to the White House Commission on Educational Excellence for Hispanics under President Obama. And we did travel to different parts of the country to learn more about best practices and issues that were affecting the educational achievement of Hispanic students. And so one of the things that really struck me was that, for example, in Dade County, they have this children's trust. And this is something that took them about a decade to be able to establish this. It's tied to property taxes. But what they have done is created a fund to have resources that they can then deploy to make sure that these types of services for young people, for 0 to 5, as well as throughout the school experience, that there are always enough resources to do that. One of the biggest challenges we always face is that we know it's important to do something in the 0 to 5 range. We know it's important to do, for example, to have after-school activities, especially targeting low-income students. But of course, money is always the issue, right? We know what the best practices are, what the designs are for programming, et cetera. Money is always the barrier. So in places like Dade County, they have solved that by creating this fund. And so I feel like at some point Montgomery County really needs to move in that direction. One of the issues that are really important, I think, to address is this issue of governance when it comes to these trusts. How are you going to govern it? Who's going to make decisions? How are the grants going to be awarded? What would be the priorities? Things of that nature. So we started with the Children Opportunity Fund as a small way of practicing what this could be like, and if at some point there is the community support and the desire to do this as a full-blown trust, then we would have all of this infrastructure in place. Montgomery County would not need the same level of funding that Miami-Dade has established. I feel like we already have a lot of assets in place that we could fold into a fund like this. But I do believe that at some point that decision should be made because it helps us save money in the long term if we're able to intervene early. That way, again, we don't have to remediate, which is what sometimes creates these challenges with the school systems funding.
Certainly. You are the chair of the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee, and Montgomery County is very proud to say that they have the longest held AAA bond rating of any county in the nation.
Yeah.
First of all, what does that mean, and how has Montgomery County been able to sustain that rating for so long?
Since 1973, actually. It's the only county in the nation. I think it's a testament to the leadership of this county, present and past, to be honest, because it really means that there has been an agreement between the executive and the council to ensure that fiscal policies are sound fiscal policies, that that we are able to ensure that we have a good and adequate reserves level, that we watch our debt service, that we correct when we have to. But I have to say that, I am particularly proud of those who were here, and I count myself in that bunch during the recession. Because, they say that it's very easy to govern and be a leader when times are really great. But the true testament and the challenge is when you face, a fiscal situation like we did during the recession. And it was a time of great difficulty. But I think that the fact that everybody acted so quickly to put in place structural changes, so not just furloughs who tend to be temporary, but we had to look at benefit restructuring. We had to look at rebasing the school system's budget. We had to look at all those things. Not easy things to do because we understand the needs that exist. But if you started looking and projecting into the future, it was clear to us that the county would be in a very perilous situation if we didn't act right away to stabilize. At the same time, we were, going to the rating agencies and saying, hey, this is what we put in place and this is our plan, not just restructuring, but also we will work to expand our tax base as much as possible, set the stage for that. And that's what we have done. We have made promises with our 6-year fiscal plan that we have in place, that every year we adopt and we say, this is our reserves level. We want to hit the 10% goal by 2020. This is our pay-go level. This is our spending affordability guidelines. This is what we can afford. All of that is really important because it's a blueprint. It's a guide to see where we are and how we need to get there. Sometimes you get, situations that you were not expecting. I mean, right now we're facing a very uncertain time because of some of the decisions that were made with tax reform at the federal level, and that is creating different behavior from some of our very wealthy filers. These are things that we cannot control or we cannot put into a fiscal plan necessarily. But we are addressing it as much as we can through savings plans and through ensuring that we don't take on too much debt. Nonetheless, again, I think looking to the future, we are having an election this year, and there will be almost a brand new council. There'll be a new executive, and these are people that are going to have to commit and face some extraordinary challenges. We have a lot of growth in our school system. We need to work on expanding facilities and things of that nature. At the same time, our debt service is such that it's our third spending category. So you got to balance that. You have to make sure that people are not tempted to say, well, let's just go into the reserves and just use that, because you do have to think about, what could occur if there was ever, God forbid, some type of incident in this area. We need to ensure that we have enough reserves to be able to sustain. And the AAA bond rating allows us to borrow at very comfortable rates. It's the same thing as having, your credit score, if you will. And so this is what has allowed us also to invest in our infrastructure. So these are things that are all interconnected. And again, it's never easy to balance it all. But I think that overall, the blueprint that we set out to achieve has really helped us. And the fact that Amazon has us on their short list means that, yes, some of those decisions, even though they were not very popular, sometimes sure has set up in a way that even, a company like this has considered us in their top 20 choices.
Nancy, March is Women's History Month. You also hold the distinct honor of being the first Latina to serve on this Montgomery County Council, as well as, of course, you're female. What advice would you have to younger females, and particularly females of color, who may want to someday be sitting where you're sitting or serve in public office?
Well, I sure hope that there's a long line, because I don't believe in that notion of being the only one and the last one. For me, I take this honor very seriously. I'm very humbled by it, because I am not confused that there are times that I know that young or school age young girls are looking up and thinking to themselves, oh, okay, look, she's Latina, she's an immigrant, she's like my mom, she's like my aunt, or she's like me, I can do that one day. And that's a huge responsibility as well. And so for me, the advice is to, listen to that voice inside of you. What are those things that give you a sense of curiosity and excitement and desire to learn more about? That might be your path, and follow it. Don't ever wait for anybody to invite you to that table, though. You need to step up and take it, because I think oftentimes, especially for women, we shy away. We were kind of waiting our turn. And I know for me, that was my experience. I never saw myself as somebody that would go into politics. I always knew that I had an extraordinary interest in, fighting injustices, addressing inequities, and things like that. I knew that that was something that really moved me, but I wasn't necessarily, wedded to the fact that it had to be through politics. Nonetheless, I realized that, the decisions that affect the issues that I care about, those decisions are being made at that table. Maybe I need to step up and say, I want to be there. And so my advice is to follow that dream, that path. Realize that you will find barriers. It's not always a rosy walk in the park, but that's okay, because it's worth at the end to have done what you came here on this earth to do. And always the idea is to help, give back, be generous, and be of service.
Well, thank you for your service as a council member here on the Montgomery County Council. Nancy Navarro has been our guest today, and you have been watching In the Loop I'm Crystal Park.